Hello, and welcome back to your favorite podcast,
De-Influenced.
Y'all are going to freak at this episode. Like, I cannot believe that we're here. Jordan and I are in Salt Lake City with Macy, Michaela, and Taylor from the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, a show that Jordan and I binge watched together.
All weekend.
And we don't usually watch shows together, and Jordan was even entertained.
I was invested.
He was
I was hooked.
I'm always shocked with the guys.
Yeah, it's good. Even the guy who owned the studio, he was like, "Oh yeah, I watched it this weekend."
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And the older men always shock me more. They're like old and like, we loved your show. And I was like, watch that? Really?
Well, it's because it's about swingers, so it's
But that's when you know it's good though. Whenever guys are watching it,
that's true. My husband was invested. Like he stayed up. I think it came out at 10, and he stayed up till 4 a.m. watching it. And like he's not very invested in like TikToks and the stuff I do, but he was like invested in his whole For You page is just Secret Lives.
My husband fell asleep. I was like, let's watch it together. I was gonna look over he's sleeping. I'm like,
he's like, oh,
I'm like, he's just as unbothered here as he was in Vegas. So I mean, or when I was in Vegas. So.
Is the reception the same in Utah versus out of Utah, you think?
Now.
No. Okay.
Honestly, I feel like we haven't gotten that much hate in Utah. I feel like we got more hate when the name was announced and then the trailer came out, but I feel like I haven't seen the same amount of hate since the show has come out.
Yeah,
but how can you?
That's good.
Yeah. There's like, I mean, I feel like the show wasn't anything what they thought.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it was really good and lighthearted too.
Yeah. So everyone's kind of like backtracking.
They're like eating their words, baby.
But it's kind of like good marketing, not only for the city, but like for LDS, for everything, because like everybody's talking about it now, right?
And they all want to come to Utah and go to swig and do all the things, get the hair. And
yeah, I want the hair and I want the swig.
Get the hair and the swig.
Jordan's like, I want the swig and the hair too.
I do have a question to start though, and this is like probably me being off TikTok and outside of MomTok. So a lot of the times on the show, it's referenced like, this isn't what MomTok was about, or this wasn't the original reason of MomTok.
MomTok survived.
So like, my question is like, what was MomTok when it first started and what has it evolved into? Because it's almost like not just a hashtag, it's like a symbol for something.
Yeah.
But I want to know from you guys like what it's a symbol for.
It was more like they have no correlation with like my situation and MomTok. Where there was a crossover is that there was someone in MomTok that was in my swinging group, if you will. So when I said that, it made this huge mess and it combined the two, even though really they didn't correlate besides me and one other girl, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take your swinging situation out. Like, what was the original MomTok about?
Oh, then just getting together and making videos
together
and
as moms and
getting ready and cute and matching. It was just not something you saw every day.
Yeah, and we all had our own brands. Like, we all had a following going into it. And it was like, oh, there's other moms who are making content in Utah too, close by. Yeah. Like, why not get together, collaborate, get more eyes, get more followers, expand the business and, like, try to help each other too.
Yeah. So it was honestly just for fun. Well, but also business in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
Yeah. It was more fun.
But it was more of like a community. It wasn't necessarily, like, connected to, like, the church or anything like that. No. It was literally just a community.
Was it Mormon wives or just, like, moms?
I would say more.
Some of them were.
Majority were Mormon, right?
But just because, like,
because
they all have Mormon roots. Like, everyone's gonna have Mormon roots. Usually, if they are from Utah, like, they're gonna have their grandfather, someone who was Mormon. Maybe they're not active anymore, but everyone's gonna have Mormon roots. I feel like typically in Utah.
But I feel like 95% were Mormon.
Yeah, and our videos weren't about like being Mormon, which is like we're just making videos together. She would do some interesting videos though about Mormon stuff.
Was not
because she knows how to work the algorithm.
I think
you get the algorithm.
I think by the end, people were like, "Tell us what you're putting over the video."
And you know what I said? And I was like, "No, then don't get in my video."
Yeah, there was a video she did. This is what I was talking about, where I was like kind of embarrassed because she didn't tell us the caption. And it was like that sound where it's like, I want to ride, right? It's kind of sexual. And she put like when he holds the priesthood, which is like a thing.
That was really bad. I will admit.
And I had like my old boss send it to me, like my uncle, like, is this you in this video? I was like, oh.
Yeah, I got in trouble for that one. But you know what? I did warn them. I was like, if you're uncomfortable, then don't get in my video.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
So were you okay? So typically, whenever you do something that's like innocent, like MomTok, let's just get together and be a community. It kind of like takes on a mind of its own. So then people make it something that it's not. So by the end, what did it evolve into? And the only reason I'm asking this is because I think that this was on the show, but one person said, I don't think it was one of you guys, where it was like MomTok was about challenging the patriarchy and like all of this stuff. Yeah. Did it become that, or is that just what the show is making it?
I think it didn't become that, but I think naturally we all were the breadwinners, right? Because we ended up making more money and like supporting our family. So I think that's what we meant by that is like you're challenging like the cultural norms maybe in the church, because it's not typical for the woman to be like the provider of the family. So I think it was more something leading into that more than being like.
But with like the mom, I feel like there were girls that liked to be the leader, mainly Whitney, because I don't feel like it's not like you wanted to be the leader, but I felt like there was like, there's a lot of strong personalities. And so it did kind of turn into this weird patriarchy thing where they're like, I'm the leader. No, I'm the leader. No, I'm the leader. I'm like, what is happening?
I feel like we relate to that just being in the space that we've been in for so long. Like I hang out with a lot of content creators, like after doing it for 12 years, like, and then a lot of our husbands help us or support us or like we go out and like film a video and then the husbands are helping us with the kids or whatever. And it changes and it ebbs and flows. Like you're starting your business and so it kind of goes like here and there, but that had to be like, how did y'all's husbands react to that perception from the show?
Mine doesn't care.
They don't care.
Just like very, and I always say this and I hate it, but like being from California too, I feel like it's a different culture. And so I feel like it's very much like 50-50 there, whereas like Utah's more traditionally the man is like the house runs the household as far as like makes the decisions. And I just feel like we never saw things like that growing up in California. And so we never
like, it's more like partners.
Oh, if anything, he's like calling me while I'm in New York. He's like, hey, so you need to post on this. Why aren't you doing this?
I'm like,
BabyMama. I was like getting so mad.
He's like, you're Kris Jenner. He's like, work it, honey.
It's like, I'm so grateful because it's like, he's so supportive. But sometimes I'm like, shut up. I'm like, leave me alone.
For us, I would say in Texas, it's even a more traditional culture as well, where it's like, you know, the men are sort of conditioned to be the providers. So I have a lot of friends who are friends with Danny, like in the space, and a lot of their husbands have switched over because it just makes the most sense for the family. And they really struggle with it. Like their ego and like just everything that they knew about the social structure has kind of flipped. And I kind of figured that would have been the case more so with y'all's husbands, maybe not everyone's husband, but like any husbands in the group struggling with that. And did it change the dynamic of y'all's marriages at all?
I feel like they'd have to at some point because you guys are, like men are like born to do that, like to feel like provide, protect. That's like in you, you know? So I feel like even if they're not coming out in a minute, it's got to be like this, like some sort of feeling.
Like a natural instinct.
It's it's like a natural thing. So I'm sure they've all felt that. And even for, so my ex, hard to say, but Dakota came into it like knowing I provide for myself with everything. But I do think there's a sense of like, I want to do this for you. I want to, right? It's naturally he's wanting to fulfill his purpose in life, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, which I do get that.
So I don't think it's a thing they're like sad about, but it's more like a natural, I want to do this for you.
Yeah, totally. I also feel like with my husband too, like he kind of lost a lot of his hobbies too. And I feel like moms are very common. They lose their hobbies and they're just a mom. And so like going through my health stuff too, when I wasn't able to take care of my kids, I was like, what is my purpose? Like, I feel like I'm supposed to take care of my kids. And so when you can't do that, I feel like there is going to be a little bit of that in the back of your head. Like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or like a little insecurity. I feel like our husbands, for the most part, are really supportive. Like I always say, my husband was meant to be the stay-at-home dad because he's way more patient than I am. Like he handles stress way better than I do. And so he loves being the stay-at-home dad, but he's definitely had issues, especially like since losing his job, where he's like, well, what am I going to do? Like a little more insecurity, but he's still so supportive.
I think they need to have like a hobby or something they're passionate about if they're not being the like provider, like the sole provider or like the head provider, I guess. Because I would say that like when my husband wasn't working, there was a little bit of that where it's like they kind of lose some of their self-esteem.
100%.
And I think they like now my husband is working again because he needed that for himself. Like he needed it to feel successful, to feel fulfilled. And I totally understand that because I would feel the same way. Like I have to be doing something.
Me too.
And it's like if I'm not, I'm like, I'm so lazy.
I feel that way even about like you said, like the pressures of being a stay-at-home mom. Like I don't know if that's just not for me. Like I will always want to be working. And there was a couple of years that Jordan took off and we were trying to figure out what he's going to be doing. He's working now again. And, but it's, that's why it's like, it just ebbs and flows and you figure it out together and every couple is different. And I don't think that there's like a right or wrong way to do it. You just like every marriage is unique. So, okay. I want to talk more about this. I want to talk more about your husband losing his job, like more about your business and everything. So on this podcast, we like to de-influence people. I don't want this podcast to be like a gotcha moment. Like I said, I told you guys before this, a lot of the girls, a lot of the community that follows us, I think they followed y'all before the show, before the scandal, which we'll talk about like briefly. And so I think they just really want to get to know you guys even better. So we kind of like to like just de-influence each person. But before we do, I know you're about to take a sip of your water. I just want to know, can you tell us briefly about the swinging scandal, just so people understand like the background? Because honestly, that kind of
like everything was kind of born from that. I mean, y'all were already like really successful before, right? And you were doing your own thing, like you grew your own businesses, but then everything kind of blew up after that.
Yeah. How far back do you want me to go?
I mean, okay, so it was outside of MomTok. You were making TikToks with 2 other couples, right?
Yep.
And then what happened?
Okay, yeah. So that's where I think things got messy is because I was doing both, right? I had both groups of like MomTok and then swinging group.
Yeah.
So during like MomTok, yes, we were like swinging, doing our thing.
Soft swinging.
Soft swinging.
Soft.
Yes, honestly, inexperienced, opening up the relationship.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we had a group of friends and we were doing that like night, I would say. And then I was making MomTok stuff by day. And that's like literally the gist of it. But I don't know how deep you want me to go. We had a falling out with this group because I had, messed up. We were fooling around. I had the affair. And then things kind of like went chaotic from there. And then this group over here messed up and called someone, told them, and then it hit the internet. So it blew up from there because like one, I was obviously getting destroyed online. Like I'm a husband stealer on all these things. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to be known for that. So I have to go on and defend myself. And it's like, this is actually what happened. So and I had no idea it was going to blow up. Like I just got to tell my followers and this would be behind me. Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah. No, it was like, I guess I didn't see it blowing up, but then now I think of it like Mormons swinging. Like I understand now how it makes sense, but that's kind of how it went. And then everyone hated me for a second. And then Whitney called me, these 2, reached out, like, hope you're okay. But I think everyone was confused. They didn't know what was going on. They don't know the true story. There's my side, there's their side. So it was like very like confusing. And I feel like the girls felt very lost in MomTok. They're like, well, obviously they didn't want to probably be my friend in this, given the information. But I think once they like learned, then like, okay, like, yeah, Taylor messed up, but also like she's telling the truth. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's why I
think there was a lot of like seeing one side of one story. And so people were like feeding off of each other's energy almost. And then we were like, wait, maybe we should actually hear the other side of the story.
Because we didn't know what was true and what was not true. We were being fed lies from some people. So
but not even like unwillingly too. Like people would invite us over to tell us these lies.
So we were looking for information. They were like giving us,
or people just DM you stuff, and you're like, I didn't even really want to receive this. Exactly. And then you're like learning about, and you're like, I don't even know if this is true. So did Tate? What's his name? Do y'all still have like you're parenting together? Yeah. What is that like now after all of this?
It's so good. Like I would have actually never guessed that. We've actually been good since. Like he helped me move. We live next, like, kind of close to each other. We were co-parenting really well. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if marriage is just friendship, like I've said this, like I could have been married for my whole life to him, but also like there's a part that there's that love you want, that passion, which we didn't have. So
you feel like even before the scandal, you guys were probably already like, do you feel like y'all weren't doing well even before that?
Oh yeah, really? I think everyone's marriages weren't, and that's why we're able to partake in this. I think everyone was tapped out. Gotcha. That's why everyone actually now is divorced.
Yeah, they all are?
Everyone is. Yes.
You're kidding. I didn't know that. Wow. And so do you feel like that kind of was like the straw that broke the camel's back?
Yeah, I think everyone would have ended up in divorce regardless at maybe future times, but this probably was just like
expedited it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, even for myself, like who knows how long I would have stayed married to him, like again, it was not a bad marriage, but it wasn't like a passionate one either.
Do you feel, because I think you said that you felt pressured to get married because of maybe like the culture of growing up in Utah? I think some of y'all have said that.
Yeah, I mean,
because you were young, right?
Yeah, we were young, but I think I just like, he marked off like all like the boxes, and I was like, I don't know, like for me, I did love him, but I think I should have given it more time for sure.
Yeah. Well, that can be hard too whenever you're just like, you check off the boxes, you're like, this is the next thing to do. And then like 5 years later, you're like, oh my gosh, what did I do?
Yeah.
So that can be hard.
I appreciate you sharing that story because I was always kind of wondering, how it got there. I didn't know it was like, oh, we were already in rocky marriages. I kind of was connecting it more to like social media, like, oh, maybe all these followers and views came, and then maybe that hurt their ego or something. And so it's interesting to hear the real story of like how it goes from 0 to 100. Oh, now we're soft swing because I mean, I don't know. I guess it would probably be more of a secret culture if it happened, in Texas, but it's not a prominent.
Oh, it happens in Texas for sure.
Well, I know it happens, but like
we know some people.
Oh, we do?
The crazy thing is like I usually don't.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, is it a prominent culture of getting to that point to try and resolve marital issues? Because I would look at Utah and LDS culture as a more traditional conservative culture. So I think that that's probably why it was such a big scandal, is like, whoa, how did we go from 0 to 100?
Yes.
Right. And so it was like rocky marriage, and then it kind of just builds to that.
Absolutely.
Well, there's a lot of that, like pretending your marriage is okay, but you're doing these things behind closed doors. So it's like, I feel like there's a lot of that in the culture of just like everything's fine and putting on like a good, like we're all perfect, we're all good.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like if you lived in LA and like it wouldn't have even been a big deal?
Probably not. No.
Right?
Maybe I think if the Mormon aspect, I think it still would.
Yeah.
The Mormon aspect for sure. Yeah.
But
no, I think
I don't know. I think there was a whole different aspect of like you being huge on TikTok, you being Mormon, you being this, and then a swinger. And so people were like,
you were making videos joking around about swapping and like about swinging before the scandal came out. So it was like, oh, it's a funny joke. And it's like, oh, it was like real.
Yeah. And honestly, they would get like bugs. Like the people, they'd be like, stop.
Yeah.
She's like, nobody's going to
Do you know the Enneagram? Do y'all know the Enneagram?
Oh yeah, I think so.
I was gonna
say like a personality test.
I was gonna say
yes. Like I can't remember. If I was like an 8 and a 3
do you remember?
Or something.
You're an 8.
I think so. I'm like an 8 and a 3. I don't remember which one's first.
Wait, what is this?
I'm still.
It's like a personality test.
It's like a personality test.
Why?
It's so fun. I was just curious what y'all were, because like you seem like you don't care what people think about you, which is I wish so badly that I was like that. I'm like the most sensitive person ever. But sometimes I'm just like, I wish that I could just put it out there and not care. And if people get bugged, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I don't. I get that from my mom.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the same way as Taylor.
It's a blissful way to live.
Yeah.
Like, if you're an 8, then you don't care.
Because I'm like, I really don't care. I'm like, you can think what you want.
Okay, so speaking of Macy, we're going to first de-influence Macy. You have a crazy story.
Yeah,
Can you tell us about your story?
Yeah, what do you want to know? It's really deep.
I know. I mean,
notes?
as deep as you want to go. Like, we like to go deep, but like, however you're comfortable.
I would think about this like a platform where people can get to know you on a level that they wouldn't on another podcast. So you go as deep as you want.
Because you probably have done so many interviews saying the same thing.
Oh, for sure.
So,
okay, I'll give like a kind of clip notes because I would be here for 5 hours.
Yeah.
With you, but long story short, I was a D1 tennis player. So me and both my sisters are tennis players, and we're all D1 tennis players. And so I went to BYU for tennis. And my sister was actually the head coach. So she's like, you're coming here. Because I was like recruited by other schools. I was like, well, I don't want to go to UCLA. She's like, well, I'm the coach now. I was like, come on over. But it was great because we had a great relationship and everything. And going into college, I met a guy before that. And he was a couple years older than me. And long story short, he was abusive. So he was it was domestic violence. And then I don't know what we can say on here, but he sexually assaulted me. So that's how I lost my virginity. He drugged me one night. It's very deep. So I'm saying it so casually.
No, it's intense. But no, I'm used to it. I think it's good for,
I know people get shocked when I say this, but it's I'm desensitized.
Yeah.
Because I've told so many people. Yeah. But so that was hard because he was also Mormon, right? So I feel like a lot of things going through that relationship was hard because it's I'm Mormon too, and he's making me feel peer pressured about things or guilty about things, and whenever I try to leave the relationship, I always got the threats. It was I'm going to tell you tell honor code that you're doing this and that, because then I would have got kicked out of the school. So I stayed with this person because I was blackmailed pretty much. So I was in this really bad relationship freshman year, and I became a different person. I was I don't say I wasn't a good person because I think I still was a good person at my core. But it just changed who I was. I was just dark. I had a dark cloud over me. And
I think anyone would be.
And I tell everyone, I'm I was psychotic. If you played me in tennis, I'm so sorry because I was psycho, freshman, sophomore year, because I had some demons.
Some anger pent up.
All my anger would come out in the court.
Yeah.
So I'm telling people to F off. At BYU of all places, playing tennis.
I can't imagine her telling people to F off.
I need this Macy on the show.
Just so you know, she's we've been talking for a while. She's the sweetest person ever. But hey, I love that. Alter egos are great.
Oh, I love that for sure.
I love it.
So I was kind of crazy. And then my sister, who's my coach too, was what is wrong with you? You are so different. And I was couldn't really tell her or tell anyone. So I was very isolated. And I couldn't tell my friends or anyone what I was going through. So it's all on me. So it would come out on the tennis court. And then luckily I was able to get out of the relationship because he was from California as well. And he ended up going back to California because he was having some health issues. And so the day he left, I was I'm going to break up with him. But I was super nice because I didn't want him to threaten me again. So I was just oh, maybe we can get back together. I just need some space and I have to finish tennis season. Mm-hmm. So luckily I was able to get out of that relationship. And then 2 weeks later, I met someone new. And then it was a very like different relationship, very free, very open. We were both like kind of in like our party phase.
Also
like,
LDS?
Also LDS,
okay.
but like we were kind of on the same wavelength where we weren't like following the guidelines, right? And
You're young.
We're young, we're having fun and like partying or whatever. And I was already in that habit from my previous relationship because I never drank or anything before I met this other guy, but like just a bad situation. So we were partying, doing all the things, and like we're in love. And then I got pregnant at BYU. So I left school because I had to withdraw because I didn't want to get in trouble from honor code. And so luckily I was able to skirt around that a little bit, just like withdrawing from school. I was no longer a student, so I couldn't like get in trouble. I left school and then I went back to California to kind of figure out my life because I just didn't know. I was like, my tennis career is over, like my life is over. Like I kind of was following all the stereotypes in society. Like when you get pregnant young, you're like, okay, like now I'm just gonna be a mom or I'm gonna have to like, you know, who knows what. But and then after that, like 2 or 3 weeks later, he passed away in a car accident. So he passed away and it was like obviously the most traumatic thing in my life. Had the worst pregnancy, like horrible, like the worst depression for it. I've never really had depression or anxiety in my life before this. Everyone gets a little anxiety and things here and there.
Of course.
But like my depression was so bad that like I wasn't suicidal, but it was there, you know? And I don't think I would have made it through if I wasn't pregnant.
Totally.
So I always say that my son, when I had him, was like my saving grace because like when I had him, it was like 80% of that depression was like lifted off my body and I found my purpose again. I found like what I wanted to do again. And like because of him, I went back to school and I finished my tennis scholarship as a single mom. So I was being an athlete, doing school, being a single mom. And granted, I couldn't have done it without my parents' help. Like I was the baby of the family. So like my mom was able to come help me because like she didn't have a job or anything growing up. So I was very fortunate to have these circumstances for sure. Cause I know it's not the case for everyone else, but I was able to finish my tennis career at BYU. Before I had him, I was doing so bad in school because I didn't care. I was just like living life. I got like a 2.9 one semester, like almost got kicked out. Or like at one point, I don't even know what it was, but it was bad. And after I had him, it was bad, you guys. After I had him, I never got below like a 3.5 or like 4.0 pretty much. Like I just like worked my ass off pretty much and graduated school. I met my husband and he like accepted my son, took both of us in.
How old was Hudson again when
we met, he was like 7 months, but I didn't like introduce him till Hudson was like 10 months because like I did have guys who would slide in the DMs and be like, I love kids. And I'm like, ew. People would try to get to you like through your kids being like, I love kids. I want to be a dad. I'm like, ew, get away. Like I don't want, like that seems like fishy to me. So I was really cautious of like who I brought like my son around. And my husband, is funny because like I feel like I rejected him a lot. And I think it's because like I don't know. I think I was just scared because I was like, next person I want to get into a relationship with, like I want to end, like I want it to be the end game, you know?
Yeah, it's because Macy likes to chase. We all know
I do.
why.
I will say.
She likes the toxicity.
I do. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm not gonna lie.
She's like, I don't know why I kept leading him on and then getting back together.
I'd be like, go kiss other girls, and I'd see him at a party, and like a girl would be like all over him. I'm like, ew, that's mine. Like I feel like I love
the competition. It's because you're an athlete.
Yeah, and
you want to win it,
and he like liked me too much.
Yeah. Wait, that was Jordan with me.
He kept like DTRing, which I don't know if you guys know that. It's like Utah slave.
Define the relationship.
Yeah.
We get it.
Like Texas too.
DTR, determine the relationship or define the relationship.
Yeah, but what does it mean? He kept
like he was trying to like, I want to be boyfriend and girlfriend.
Oh. Like he was trying to move forward.
Where are we? Like, what are we? Are we this or that?
Yes, and I'd be like, I'll let you know. And then I wouldn't, hoping he'd never bring it up. And 2 weeks later, he's like, so what are we? And I was like, nothing. And then like,
I just want the spice.
I feel like I was like kind of rude. Like he was so good. He just kept coming back. And eventually I realized like, he's like literally the best guy. Like he was just so good to me. And like, I think
That's marriage material.
And I had a pass for liking F-boys. I'm not even gonna lie. So I was like, this is the first like really nice guy that was just pure. And it was like hard for me to like accept the love, I guess, you know, like feel like I deserved it. And so, then like we got married and
Were you on social media when you got married when you got married or when you were dating?
No, I mean, I had an account, but I wasn't like
posting.
Posting. I mean, I started after we got married, I started a blog and wrote my life story. And that's kind of how it started. Like I wasn't trying to like be an influencer, but I wanted to like help other women because like when I was going through things, I was like, no one feels like I do. And I granted there are plenty of people out there, but I wasn't seeing it. Because I feel like that was the curated Instagram where it's like perfect life, perfect everything. And so I was like, I just want to lay it out there and hope that someone can relate to me and I can help someone else who's been through like these same circumstances. Because especially as a Mormon, I was like, I haven't heard these stories, you know?
Right.
And so I laid it all out there, and it grew from there. Like I had so many women reaching out, and like it grew my first 10K, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I was like, well,
TikTok,
Instagram,
okay.
And I was like, I wonder if I did like this could be something more. And then like TikTok came around, and I was started posting on there, and I got like my first 60K from like a video, and I was like, why don't I keep posting? Like maybe this will be the new Instagram.
Yeah.
And I just was consistent. Like I grew from there, and like really was like a blessing, to be honest.
Well, I know a lot of people like your story is insane, and I know it's probably not super easy to share, especially every day to strangers.
Oh, yeah.
But I bet so many people appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
And like you've probably impacted so many people's lives that you don't even know.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why a lot of people resonate, honestly, with all of y'all is that you're not perfect. We all make mistakes. But instead of just hiding behind this facade, like you guys are real and own it and are vulnerable. And like that's when people really connect. I feel like is through all of that, not by like your perfect lifestyle and your perfect picture and the perfect hair. Like nobody wants to see that anymore.
Exactly. I feel like that's why we've connected so much, is because we are a group that trauma dumps a lot. And that's how we connect, like, and so quickly too.
So many people have trauma.
Like we had to learn that the hard way though. Too.
Yeah,
I feel like that was how I wanted to be on TikTok. Like, it was like, I want to look pretty, I want to look perfect, I want to do all this, and then
same, I get it.
when everything blew up, that's when people liked me.
Yeah.
Like, I come on crying, be like, I hate my life. Like, like, how do we like this? And like, yes, it's a mess to watch, but also it's like we're seeing like a true person like suffering and like expressing. So I feel like that's how we all can relate to.
And I think that's what we're excited to. We get a season 2 is that like we want to be able to dive into our stories deeper because like Michaela has an amazing story. Taylor, besides her swinging scandal, has like a lot of amazing stories in her life. And so I think we are excited for people to know us on a deeper level, not just for like the drama and the scandal.
Exactly. It's almost like the drama and the scandal will like hook them in. But then now you guys are going to have this platform and this opportunity. I told you this earlier. I'm like, I feel like y'all are on step 1 of like 100, where it's like when you look back at the Kardashians' first episode and you're like, oh my gosh, like look what they were wearing and look how they filmed it. And that's how I feel like you guys are going to be in 10 years, because I feel like you'll have so much longevity with where you're going because of your personalities, not only your personalities, but like your hearts and like the way that y'all are able to be vulnerable. So I'm glad that you brought up Michaela's story because I want to.
Can I ask one question?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you went to BYU.
Yeah.
Okay. So we went to UT
He's like,
Austin.
how do I get in?
Because I fit the vibe.
They all said that Jordan looks like he's like would go to BYU.
Are you guys like Christian?
Yeah.
Christian,
So we're like evangelical Christians, and so shoot, you said that, so now I have another question. But my first question is on BYU. So we went to like a true Southern school, like known as a party school.
Yeah.
When we think of BYU, we think of not like partying or anything like that. We think of the projection that the LDS community is projecting, which is we're perfect. We don't drink coffee. We don't do this. You told me 2 stories in that whole thing of that were
naughty.
pretty wild with BYU. Is it common for students just to skirt around the honor code? Like, is that the majority? Is that the minority? Like, are you guys truly a party school just hiding behind the honor code? Like, what is the dynamic like there?
I wouldn't say we're a party school by any means, because I feel like there's could be a mixture. Like I always say this, like you can find it at any school you want, no matter where it is. I had the same like perception of BYU before I went there. I was like, people don't drink here, they don't do anything bad. And then like I got into that stuff and it was like, oh, my roommate across the hall drinks, like let's party together. Like it became one of those things where like there's a whole, I always talk about this, there's a whole underground party scene.
Yes.
And there's like rules for these things because you don't want to get caught, right? Because you go to the honor code, you get in trouble and they'll like kick you out. So like you go to a party and like you would put alcohol in your cup like in the back room. Like you wouldn't want anyone to see you. Like you don't want to have any evidence of anything. And like
smell
it, but everyone has red cups. Who's to say like I was the one drinking or they were drinking? I mean, because we all have the red cup, so no one really knows.
Well, it's funny because when you're talking to Whitney about it, because Whitney I think lived at her parents' house when she went to BYU, so she's like, "There's a party scene at
she's
BYU.
Like,
what are you talking about?"
Like, oh yes, it did. She's like, why wasn't I invited? I'm like, the reason why you don't know about the party scene is the reason why you weren't invited.
She's like, you were the person that would rat us out.
You don't invite just anyone. You have to invite people you trust. Like there were like actually rules. It's like you couldn't just bring like a +1. Like we'd have to know who they were. Like are they chill? Like how do we know if they're chill?
It's like exclusive.
No, it was, but not because we wanted to be. Just because like you don't want to get in trouble. Because like there was times where someone did show up and then they like to pick up someone who wasn't drinking or something, and then they would rat them out, like rat people out.
It's kind of like going to a private school. I feel like
kind of like going to one of Taylor's swinging parties.
Was it that exclusive?
Yeah, like a lot of people were shocked when they found out that they were at the parties and had no idea.
They had to be smart.
Did you ever try to like invite new people?
We could kind of gauge who would be like down. Or like they would say something and I'd be like, why didn't they make
So my second question, so we have a lot of ground to cover. My second question is, you guys becoming better at like being more vulnerable and not being the perfect LDS person, do you think that is challenging other LDS members to do the same in a good way? And what I mean by that is that I don't know the differences like in our beliefs. I think that they have some overlap in terms of like Jesus and the gospel. So the whole gospel for us is like we can't be perfect enough to earn God's favor. But it seems like the difference culturally between like evangelical Christians in the South and like Mormons in Utah is like what we are projecting. So like Christians in the South are like, hey, like we're not good enough. We can never be good enough. And so like, that's why we need Jesus. Whereas like, I think that there's this projection, even the guidelines at the school of like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But I almost wonder if it like misses the heart of the matter. You know, it's like, you're still drinking, you know, and your biggest, the heart of you wanting to drink is still there. Yeah. But you're trying to skirt around these guidelines. So like, what's the point really? And so I'm wondering if you're challenging stereotypes.
I think it encourages people to almost hide it more.
Yeah.
To be like, I don't do that.
And I think too, like the guidelines are in place not to be perfect. It's more so just like so you can have the best life you can. So it's kind of like it's protection, I would say. It's like why they have certain guidelines. It's not because it's like, oh, you need to be perfect. It's more like these are in place because like we think you're gonna live the best life if you follow these guidelines. Like
but there are consequences. There's like you can get kicked out of the school if you break the honor code. Like you and I want to understand this later, so let's not get into it yet. But like you can't take sacrament if you've done XYZ, right? So they're kind of not just guidelines. They're like, hey, you have to uphold this or else XYZ consequences happen.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's why we have like the atonement, like our repentance process is because it's like, we want people to repent and to go to like to our bishops and be like, hey, I did this. Like, how can I like be forgiven? And it's like, it's not like, how can I be? Because no matter what, Christ is going to forgive you. Right. But it's more like, how can you forgive yourself? Like, no, you did something wrong and forgive yourself. I don't know if I necessarily agree with all the processes in place with the church, because I do think, to me, having to have repented to a bishop at some point in time, multiple times to say, at least, it's not something that I would want, I think, my girls to do in the future. And if they did, I would want to be in the room because I do feel like, I will say there is a difference between Mormons right now in time and like our parents' generation. And I would say that culture is a little more strict and a little more to the book and not as forgiving. Whereas I feel like the Mormons in our generation are a little bit more progressive and accepting. And so I think that's what the show we really wanted to show is that like you can be Mormon and make these mistakes and that's okay. And like Jesus still loves you and God still loves you and you have a place at church. Like you don't have to go hide because you're not perfect.
So much of it is more about the heart, not the guidelines and checking like this rule off of a list, right?
Yeah. And I think that Mormons who are upset about that are because like it's almost coming from a place I think of jealousy where it's like, well, like I'm doing all these things and you're not, you're still claiming to be this.
Or pride. A pride of saying, hey, I am good enough. I have earned God's favor in a way that you
and you're not doing
it. That you haven't done it. And so God loves me more. It's like when I was watching the show, you know, I told Danny this, but like I was watching your story because I knew about the swinging scandal and, you know, you were struggling with Dakota of having a baby out of wedlock. And I was like, man, you know, what's so crazy is like, who Jesus would be having dinner with is Taylor. Like 100%. He would be there with Taylor being like, hey, like you've made a mistake, but like I'm here. I love you all the same. And that's what I think is cool about what you were saying about just being open and honest about your stories because you're breaking down these stereotypes that you have to be perfect, which I think in a crazy way will lead more people to Jesus.
I think so. And I think it's kind of confirmed like why we're doing the show, at least for like all the people that are active, like getting the comments from people being like, you guys aren't Mormon. This is disgusting. Like, this isn't what a typical Mormon wife looks like. And then we're like, oh, it confirms why we're doing this. Because there are people still out there who think there's one way that a Mormon wife should look like or act. Or we shouldn't be talking about sex openly or different things or feel shame talking about these things. So I think it's important to have those conversations. I think it has already opened a lot of people up to having those conversations. So
just wild.
And again, I think it's
wild. This whole reality TV show, it's like a 180 of what people expected. People watched it. They hate watched it. They were like, I'm going to watch this to hate these people. And then they were like, oh man, like, cause you have to face yourself. You're like, you have to face your own hypocrisy and be like, why do I think I'm better than Michaela or like Taylor? Why do and they're not. And some people can't do that, and so they're just like, I hate her. I'm gonna comment.
And I think a lot of all that judgment and stuff comes from the culture. Like it comes from the culture, not the church.
Not the church,
and
not the religion.
Human nature in general.
People who are making up their own like beliefs based off our guidelines, being like, well, you're not supposed to do this. Why aren't you wearing your garments? Why aren't you doing this? It's coming from their own insecurities and I'm like, it's our relationship with God. I don't care what you think because I know that Jesus is going to love me whether I have a cup of coffee today or not.
Yeah. They're probably just projecting a little bit.
Yeah, so a lot of it is cultural, not like
they start to worship the culture.
That's really, I want to talk about that more later.
Yeah.
We'll go into everyone's story, but that is so intriguing that it's the culture, not the church.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, to keep things moving, Michaela, I feel like we didn't really get to hear too much of your story on the show. And I think I saw a TikTok or something that, I mean, you were going through a lot.
Yeah.
And so can you kind of tell us a little bit? I mean, tell us about yourself. I want to know about Michaela.
She has a great story.
Thanks, Macy. I'm like, thanks, Mom.
And I'm hoping season 2 we get some more.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Michaela. I actually grew up in California as well. I grew up in Granada Hills. And then moved down here when my parents got divorced when I was like 9 or 10, I think, in Provo. And so it's a totally different scene. I did grow up LDS. Not as by the book as most. I feel like probably closer to you. But no, I'm like, I don't know. This is nerve-wracking. School.
It'll be good practice. Have you started filming season 2?
Not
no.
It'll be good practice for
Wait,
season 2.
no,
I
I think
think
story in season 1.
I did.
Okay.
So it is, I mean, if there's a season 2, I hope it'll be in there. I can't say much about that or go like too in depth with it.
Sure.
But yeah, so I had my first kid when I was 17. I got pregnant when I was 16, had him at 17. And I think I was like a junior in high school at this point, right? Senior?
Also, tell them how you moved out of your house.
Oh,
I feel like I know her whole story because you're like, it doesn't show up, but we're like best friends too. And they didn't really show that on the show. It didn't even look like we're close, but like,
because
we know each other's stories like inside and out.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, were too. Really, best friends.
Yeah.
With her. Yeah.
Apparently,
wait,
not Macy.
Y'all
says
were the
Whitney's
first
your best friend.
Whitney,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because so y'all really were best friends before the show.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which made it fun to do it together. Well, I mean,
Taylor, I guess.
Okay, I wasn't as close with them, but I did get
It's
close
like that's
as
that sound. It's like,
But,
I mean,
sorry,
I'm your
just-
best friend.
Not to cut you off, but
I would say
y'all were friends because of TikTok.
yes.
Yeah.
I would say
Okay.
I would say we were the closest out of like the other group.
yeah.
Totally.
But I guess we weren't best friends.
Wouldn't you guys say we got closer during film?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like we were best friends when we started.
It's like that
filming,
sound
for
that's
sure.
like, yeah,
I'm your best
yeah,
friend.
yeah.
I mean, I'm your best friend. Yeah, so I moved out of my house when I was 15 and with a friend down the street that I grew up with. I love that she's like, good job.
Yeah.
I'm like,
No. So I moved out when I was 15 and then I moved into my sister's house with my other sister who also moved out when she was 17. Just due to my mom's situation with her boyfriend. We didn't really get along or liked her boyfriend. So she was like, peace out then. So we moved out with my sister and then I got pregnant almost exactly a year later. Like I think I found out almost a year exactly that I was pregnant at 16. So moved in with my now husband, Jace. Had my son at 17, got married when I was almost 18, had my second when I was 19, my third when I was 21. And then when I was 21 is when it was right after my last daughter that I started having my health issues. Like I didn't really have anything before. And then it kind of just came out of nowhere. And it started with like little things. Like I don't know if you guys, like your kids have had molluscum.
Mm-mm.
No, they're like little, I don't even know how to explain
it's
them.
almost like a pimple without a head, like a bug.
Yeah.
It's like a little
buzz.
wart. Like kids get them. It's not very common that adults get them. And so like I got like molluscum and my dermatologist was like, oh, that's really weird. And then I started getting rashes and like really bad allergies. And no one could really figure out what it was. Like I went to dermatologists for years. Now I've been dealing with it for almost 3 years and still have no answers on what it is exactly.
Wow.
But at the beginning of January, or when was it? March of 2023, I got breast implants put in. And within a month, I just broke out in rashes so bad.
Really?
And then I got on steroids, like 2 or 3 rounds of steroids. And every time I got off the steroids, it would just rebound and come back so much worse. And then I would go through steroid withdrawal where I was like constantly shaking. I was like, my body temperature was going, like it was like I was an addict going through withdrawal. And that lasted for like 3 months. And I was going through it while filming. And so
that's was during filming.
Yeah. So it was at the worst when I was filming. I think when we started filming season 1, I had just got my implants out.
Yeah.
And so I had to go from getting my implants out to getting on a flight next day filming season 1, like going. So I had just gotten out of surgery. And I ended up having an emergency surgery after I got my implants out because I got a hematoma. So like that same night, I had to go back and get another surgery to like,
which that's just like a fluke thing.
Out. Yeah, I know. But for me, it was like it would just showed my story. I was like, of course, there's another thing. Of course there is. Like I would do one thing, nothing would work, and then something else would come, and that's kind of like what's been happening. And then I had an infected root canal that I got taken out because I've just gone down like rabbit holes of like, maybe it's this, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. So I was so desperate to try anything. And I feel like people with chronic illness are, and especially when you're not getting answers, they're like, well, I mean, I'm desperate to try anything. So I pulled out my tooth. I got all the infection cleaned out. I went to Costa Rica and I got all my mercury fillings taken out because I had mercury toxicity in my body. And I had bacterial infections and all sorts of different infections in my body. And I went on like 3 different medications that would work for a little bit and then it would rebound. And so I feel like I'm still in that cycle right now of like, I don't know like I'm a lot better than I am for sure, or what I was for sure. But there's still,
and she does like all the like diets.
A process. Yes, I'm
sure. All the diets
don't forget to tell me about your diet.
I've been eating nothing. I've been eating like a rabbit for the last year and a half. But with filming, I do feel like taking the implants out did help.
Really?
Because I took the implants out and it was like, I would have some symptoms that would go away. I took the implants out and I lost like 12 pounds in like a week of just water weight and inflammation. And so then my eyebrows started falling out and my hair started falling out. And that's when we started filming. Like I remember looking back at the first clip and I was like, it looks like I went through chemo. Like my eyebrows started falling out. My eyes were all sunken and I lost like 12 pounds in a week. And then I would gain 12 pounds of inflammation in a week. And so I feel like during filming, I was just like this. I looked different in each scene because it really was just like a roller coaster. And with filming a reality show, it's hard because I didn't know what I was going to be like tomorrow. And so I would have to show up to filming no matter what it was like. And so I feel like that was the really hard mental battle of it. And like I was the person that always showed up in sweats and no makeup. And so people were like, oh, why is she not ready? Why is she not looking like a certain way? But I feel like it was important for me to still show up and still bring light to chronic illness. And like, because it's so common, especially now in this day and age, I feel like chronic illness is at an all-time high and not a lot of people talk about it or like want to get to the root cause of things. It's like, here, take this medication, medication. Put a Band-Aid on it. Yes, put a Band-Aid on it. And so I feel like it's really important. I have touched a lot of people and I get a lot of messages. And so I'm happy that I'm sharing it, even though it's not easy. Like it's not easy to show up to filming and be like, oh, I don't recognize that girl, or like have to show up to filming knowing millions of people are going to watch this or see me like this. And so I feel like that was the most important thing to me, is to still show up no matter what, no matter how I was filming or feeling, because I know people out there are feeling the same way and want to connect with other people who are going through similar things. So,
wow. And they did touch on it in season 1, but I feel like we didn't get to hear like all of that, like the heart of it and how challenging it was showing up each day, and like the fact that other people are relating to you and shedding light on that. Like, I think that's really, really important and cool what you're doing. How do you feel like, so physically, obviously it's been a huge hindrance. Like, are you feeling like even like achy and sick and like all of that too?
I am. Like, I'm still always shaking. Like I still can't regulate my body temperature very well. Like I won't have rashes, but like my skin will still be super red and I'll feel super hot. And then in an hour from now, I'll be like shaking and cold. Like I'm still really sick. I have a lot of different infections in my body and different like mercury toxicity. Mercury is such a terrible thing. And the fact that they're putting it in people's mouth is wild to me.
How did you find out about that you had toxicity? Yeah.
So I've done like every single test. So blood test, urine test, stool test. Like, and it's really tricky, especially with chronic illness, and testing it really is just a money market with like pharmaceuticals companies and like doctors. They're like, oh, well, you can test for this, but it's just a broad range of things. Like if you want to test for something specific, you have to do a test for that thing specific. So I've had to I've spent tens of thousands of dollars.
Do you think that because of the exposure of the show, a lot more doctors and specialists are reaching out to give you exposure to kind of a new class of doctors, or this segment over here? It's so crazy how everyone's body's different. Like I remember Tony Robbins. Do you know who that is? He had mercury. He had mercury poisoning.
Yes. So I've listened to a lot of the podcasts about it.
But he just ate too much fish.
Yeah, he did. Yes.
He ate so much fish that he got mercury poisoning.
It's like, I think there's like elemental mercury, or like different types of mercury that you can get, but like fillings in your mouth will literally vaporize.
Yes.
Like I think at like a certain temperature, so your body heat will just vaporize them naturally. And so people will get sick from it. And so I was in like a constant cycle of, yes, I was doing all these detoxes, but I still have what's poisoning inside of my body. Yeah. So it was like, I was just working backwards. And so I was doing all the diets, I was doing all the cleanses, and nothing was working. It was so frustrating. And then also I was depressed because I couldn't eat anything good. Like I'm such a foodie person, and to take away like dairy, gluten, sugar, like all these things, it was so hard. But I don't feel like I've gotten a lot of doctors reaching out. I feel like I've just found a lot of community of people going through similar things. And it is kind of a blessing or blessing and a curse, because they're like, this works for me. And I'm like, okay, great, I'll try it. And then it doesn't work for me. And I'm like, okay, now what? But I do think there's more pros than cons. And I've connected with a lot of people that way. I'm actually, I started doing like an antifungal stuff because someone told me, they were like messaging my husband actually, which is funny because they're like, I'm trying to get in contact and she's not answering me. And she's like sending him pictures of like what her skin looked like. Like I went through similar things. I was on this medication and then this happened. And I was like, okay, that's what's happening to me. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, I was on this medication and did like this diet. And so that's what I've been doing. And it's like been helping a lot for sure. Like I still have a lot happening, but I don't know if it's working because it's the medication or if it's working because I took out my mercury fillings and things are kind of now just finally detoxing.
Yeah.
So it's hard to pinpoint.
It's hard to say what
answers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it usually takes consistency before you
for sure
see a result.
Yeah, it's hard. And
just so hard.
And it's hard too because people with chronic illness I know are trying so much at one time because they're so desperate. And so I'm like, I don't really know what's working. Like I've been doing like ozone IVs. I've been doing chelation to detox the mercury. I've been doing the diets. I've been doing like the mold cleanses, the liver cleanses, the juice cleanses. Like
you just do it all?
Literally everything. I've done everything.
I do it.
Yeah.
It's like a job, a whole nother job just with wellness.
Yeah, it is for sure. And like I was saying, like with my kids, it's during that period of time I couldn't take care of my kids. And so I was like, what is my purpose? And like also I didn't feel like myself, and going through steroid withdrawal, it messes with like the chemical balance in you too. So I had a lot of like chemical imbalances. And then filming on top of it was just a whole nother element.
This is kind of a weird question, but like, have you found a lot of purpose in this like season or this challenge that you're going through? Like, I'm sure a lot of people look up to you now, especially because you have a platform, and they're like, hey, thank you for speaking out on this. You know, has it kind of given you a sense of purpose just to almost like provide a voice for those people?
I think for sure. It's just getting all the messages. I feel like I'm overwhelmed with all the messages that I get because it's not easy to talk about. And I feel like it's not easy for me to show up and have to like not recognize myself. And that's my job, being on camera. And then having a reality show, it's not easy. But I'm like, why is this happening to me? I feel like that was the question I would always ask my husband. I'm like, this isn't fair. Why is that happening to me? And like, why is it not getting better? And I'm getting all these opportunities like the show, doing all this press stuff, flying out and doing things. And I'm like, although it's at a bad time in my life where I'm like, I wish it was different circumstances, I feel like there is a reason. I'm like, I feel like there's a reason it's happening to me. Like I grew up with eczema and I hated having eczema. I would cover it up. And so now I'm like, I just want to show it and show up for people who might be younger and feeling similar to how I was. And so just having someone to look up to, or someone that looks like them, or maybe they're not getting answers. And so I share everything that I'm doing. And I'm like, I hope this helps someone out there, but like, cause I know how frustrating it can be, and it's a lot, but yeah.
I'm sure you get the DMs, but y'all are like, I mean, every single one of y'all have crazy stories. Like, I am overwhelmed. Like y'all are so strong. And so thanks for sharing that with us. Okay, moving on, Taylor, let's hear from you. Can you tell us more about kind of like your childhood and growing up?
Yeah.
Before getting on, and then what led you to get on TikTok?
Okay, so I grew up Mormon, born and raised. I'd say pretty devout. Like they're more laid back though. I was in Colorado till I was 16, so we moved to Utah, and then like obviously it's a different culture. So
must just be the Utah culture.
Yeah. It is. It's a bubble.
So
yeah. And then I worked, jobs like in high school, fun little jobs, and I became a nanny, and then I started doing social media once I got married. So with Tate, and then my daughter and I used to do matching like outfits, like we'd match. And so I feel like that's where I kind of built was Instagram. And then when TikTok came out, I was like, I'm never doing TikTok. Like that's embarrassing. And then quarantine hit and we're all bored. So we're
all TikToking, dancing.
Yeah, literally, yeah. I did it because I was bored, and I was like, fine, I'll like get on it. So I was like watching it, and then I did a video, and I think my first one did really well. And Tate had it for years, and he's like, you just did your first video and it's like doing so well. Like what the heck? And so I'm like, okay, well maybe I'll just continue it. So I just kind of did over time, and then random videos would blow up. So I just continued to do it. And then we started to see like emails come in, like it was making money. And so we just started to like email back, and then it got so busy. I got a management. they started to help me, but then I went over to Macy's because she's like, I have a really good manager. So then I just kind of took off from there. Had my second son, and then that's when kind of things were getting rocky and kind of up to that point. So nothing crazy. I feel like in my childhood, I did never know my dad. So my biological father, I met him once when I was 4. And that was literally it. So I think I have like a lot of underlining daddy issues. Like I'm not feeling loved and like, wait, why is that funny?
I just like the word daddy issues. I feel like
I hate saying that.
I know.
Just because you said daddy issues. That's
no,
why.
because I hate saying it. And
yeah, I get.
Why do you hate saying it?
I don't know, because maybe I don't like to admit it. Like, there's issues there of like why I feel like I need to feel validated by men, and I think that comes from like never feeling loved by a man, like growing up. Like my dad now loves me and was always there. So like my stepdad, I've never called him that. Like he's my dad, but like there was like this bond between him and my sister. Like that's your little girl. Like it wasn't the same with me. Like he was very like, I love you, but there was like this disconnect. So I felt like, very unloved, like not unloved, but not this like love that you get from your father. Right. And so I felt like there was some issues there of like wanting that. Like I've always had crushes on bishops, dentists, doctors, anyone with authority.
Really?
And I told like my psychiatrist this, and she's like, it's you want to feel like loved by someone, you know, like taken care of. So those are people that take care of people. So like 100%. Managers, I would like have crushes on because they had authority. It was really weird. I honestly didn't understand it, but like therapy, like you learn all these things. So I think the one thing I needed in a marriage was attention because of like all these issues of like being wanted. And then I didn't get that. So I seeked it elsewhere, right? I think that's where my part of like rooting, destroying my family came from, is like I didn't get that. So I seeked elsewhere. And so I think, that's where my daddy issues come from. And like a lot of the reasons why I am the way I am, I don't know. And then I wanted to meet him as I got older and kind of like ask questions. And then he died on my honeymoon. So I got a call saying your father passed away. So I never really got the chance to meet him. So that's pretty much like my childhood.
You're close with your mom though.
Yeah, very. And
your
my
mom was
dad
on the show. And your dad, you know. But what does your mom say about your? Did they have a relationship? Your mom and your biological father?
Yeah. So she actually got pregnant in high school as well, and she was 16, had me at 17, and then he got in a car accident and got addicted to painkillers. So he was actually an addict as well. And so he got so addicted that my mom was like, I feel like this is like not good for you to like have her right now. She didn't feel like she trusted him. So he just like signed me over, like, and then my dad actually was a missionary, met my mom on his mission, and then came back and got her after his mission and me. And then so adopted me when I was 2. And then I got sealed to them in the temple. And but I got closer to my dad. I've been closer to him now than I've ever been once all of this blew up, because he came to me and he was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I've been like not distant, but like haven't been close to you. And he's always felt that. And so he's been here for me like a lot. Like he's over like all the time. Like, what can I help you with? Like very loving. So I'm like so grateful for him. And it's nobody's fault. Like nobody's fault. It's just like that underlining feeling you have growing up, feeling like unloved. I don't know. Or like not good enough to be like, he didn't fight for me, right? My dad. So anytime that a guy has done me dirty, I think it like validates that feeling. That's why I think I can't grasp it. And it's happened to me in my life. But I think when Dakota did it, it was like, it was just like so hurtful. Like I can't, I don't know. Like it's like ruined me. And it's not because of him. It's like because of these wounds that are like not healed, you know? So I like still can't talk about it. It's like sucks. I don't know.
Taylor, you're so mature for everything that like the way that you're even processing all of this. Like it's amazing to see, like, even talking about your childhood and like where you are now. Like I have so much respect for you, because most people I feel like are not able to like look back and be like, oh, this is why this is happening, or this is, you know what I mean? And
I had to have someone tell me, like a therapist. Like,
but you took you went. And like most people can't face that. Like, trust me, like what you're doing is amazing. Like even just a self-reflection, and like, you're an incredible person. You really are. And I know you've been through a lot, but
I was betting on this the whole show. Ask Danny. I was like, I feel.
No, he like, literally.
I knew.
Episode 2 or 3. He was like, Taylor is so. What did you say? You're like, she's the most mature on this show,
right? Because y'all shot the pilot. We can get into this later, but like y'all shot the pilot, and then you basically come on to episode 2 pregnant, right?
Yes,
that's kind of how it worked.
Yeah,
but like I
the
could
timeline
tell
was kind of like weird.
Episode 2 onward, I was like, even through the I'll say it because you said it, toxicity of you and Dakota's relationship. I was like, I feel like she is searching, and I feel like she's broken, but kind of healing. Like, I just felt like you were in this place where it's like, man, like Jesus is like so close to like reaching this person. Like I could tell that there was like this redemption story coming. So for you to be on this podcast, like I was betting on it when I was watching it. I just watched it this weekend, but for you to be on the podcast and like show that, it's like so cool for me, because I was like, man, I really want, this is someone that America just hated, you know, because, oh my gosh, you're the husband stealer, you're this, you're that. And I just was like, man, I feel like how cool would the grace and redemption story be for this girl? And it's just that maturity that you just showed is incredible.
Well, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to get emotional. I feel bad for Macy because like when people ask me hard questions, I'm like, because she's been with me like interviewing the time.
It
So I'm
makes
like,
me want to cry.
Girl, I cry like so much. It's the hormones too, and it's like you get 4 women together, and it's like we all our hormones just like all like attached to each other.
Trauma. So it's like hard, and it's like hard to talk. I've said it so many times, but I feel like the deeper questions obviously are like harder to answer when it's just like I think my friends have like. Everyone around me is like, why can't you get over this like thing that happened? And it's just like so much deeper than what happened.
It hurts.
And you're still healing, and you're still figuring it out.
Yes.
And that's all of us, you know. Like,
and sorry if I'm supposed to know this, but are you and Dakota together now? I genuinely don't know. I'm not trying to get a gotcha, so you don't have to answer.
No, we're like working through things. We'll see where it goes.
Okay. Yeah. Tune in for season 2. What was I going to ask? Oh, throughout all of that, like when you first found out you were pregnant or getting married, like where was your faith? And like how has it, I guess, transitioned till now? Is it still the same? You know what I mean?
I was like with Tate.
Yes, through with Tate and till now. Like
I would say it was definitely like more devout then. Like I was going to church probably like 2 out of the 4 Sundays.
Okay.
And I didn't drink. I was like that was like such a good few years for me. I feel like very like, I don't know, I was not spiritual, but like very in tune with myself and happy, like very happy. I remember those years. And then I think as time went on, obviously when you're doing those types of things, it brings you nothing but like misery and you have to learn the hard way, and then misery loves company. So it's like, and I think I've felt misery ever since, honestly. I don't think I've been happy like since. For sure. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's like
work in progress.
Work in progress. And are you like not saying like to following the guidelines or going to church, but do you have that faith, like a faith now?
Yes. That is something like I've never left the church. I never want to leave the church. Like it's there for a reason. I feel like it's there for when you like need it and need help. Like that's what the message.
Well, I feel like you're the perfect example of it too, because she was like on live saying, "I'm a swinger," and the next week she's going to church. I'm like, if Taylor can go to church,
I freaking love it though. I'm like, that is so cool.
That's what it's happy. Like to feel like
like we make mistakes and it's okay.
And I think that's what the girls on the show that are Mormon want to like.
Yeah, like the church isn't for people who are perfect, but for sinners. Like that's why we go.
No, I want to go and I want to feel good. Like you're going to be forgiven. Like, that's what it's for.
It's not about guidelines. It's about your heart.
And I loved a comment. We got a comment that they sent in the group chat of someone that commented. They're like, I would feel much safer in a room of these women than I would with all of you guys in the all you Mormons in the comments, like judging them and being judgmental, calling them names, saying they're disgusting. Like I would feel so much more comfortable with this group of women than any of you guys.
This is what I always say, like whenever I'm in a Bible study or I'm with my friends and like we're being real, I'm like, right now we're experiencing God. We're not just reading about him. We're not like actually just like, we're not going to church and just thinking, oh, what would that, like this is like true faith. And this is a true experience with the Lord, not just, you know, reading something and checking it, like you said, checking off the list. So
do you think that right now, Danny, and you can tell me if this is a bad idea, I would love to drill into like the difference between the culture and the church, because I think that's so helpful for people, because you guys gotta understand the show is called The Secret Life of Mormon Wives. So this, all of y'all's trauma is tied up, whether you meant it to be or not, in this like church. So I think what people are trying to de-influence or dissect is like, what role did the church or Mormonism play in where we are today? Right. So the swinging and stuff. And it turns out like that was just a really, like, I went through a lot in my childhood. I was in a broken marriage, and then that's how it led to, you know, but people want to simplify it and be like Mormon swing, you know, like there's general broad strokes. And so like growing up in I guess I don't even know the question. Like, how do you unpack like what is the difference between the church and the culture, as you said it, maybe?
Like it's tricky.
It is tricky. And I would say for me, like my parents always told me growing up, like the gospel, like Jesus Christ is perfect, but the people aren't. And I think I've always had that differentiation. So like when I see people judging us, I'm like, you're not perfect either. Yeah. And like, honestly, God, they said not to cast stones at other people. It's imperfect. So I mean, like, go right ahead, but you'll be judged for your judgment. So I think it's just like, it is different culture in California too than Utah.
Right.
And I will say I did have judgment growing up because like we weren't the most traditional Mormons. Like we didn't always go to church on Sunday because I was competing in tennis. And, you know, I wore tube tops and usually like you see Mormons there covering their shoulders a little bit more. Like we just weren't as traditional like my parents were a little bit, you know? And so I think it just depends on where you live. And I'd say Utah has the most judgmental culture. I would say people are very nice here, like compared to where I'm from. And people are nice in California. But when I came to Utah, I was like, so nice here, like so friendly and like
because it's a facade.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't that just externally nice, but then behind closed doors, it's gossipy.
But are they being nice because it's like in the Book of Mormon that you have to be nice to everyone so that you get into heaven, or is it like what is the route that everybody's following the guidelines? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's just because the guidelines are there for you to live like the best life possible.
Oh,
so like instead of like drinking and stuff, it's like I guess if someone did it in moderation, right? Like you probably would be fine. But like sometimes drinking can lead to you making bad decisions.
100%.
Maybe you're driving.
I've made some bad decisions drinking.
Me too. Maybe you're hooking up with someone you shouldn't.
Classic Mormon. Right here.
I don't drink anymore, but like I've had my moments in college. I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
No, same. So I think they're more there like to protect you, not to be like, oh, if you don't do this, you're not like worthy necessarily. But like again,
but the culture, that's
the
where
culture makes you feel that way because people think the guidelines are like stone, like a commandment, you know?
Do you guys know the term like legalism?
In what
it's
context?
like, so like, this is what we say in like evangelical Christianity. It's like, it's called legalism. And so basically what it is it's like taking the heart of the gospel out of it and making it a series of rules, which psychologically makes us feel that we can earn our way to heaven, like earn our way into God's good graces. And like, what I feel like evangelical Christianity does so often is like, hey, like you are not good enough and you can never be good enough. That's why we need to like have a relationship and depend on Jesus. Whereas like, I feel like the guidelines that have been set out kind of create a culture of legalism, accidentally or intentionally, I don't know, you know, of, oh my gosh, if I don't follow rule XYZ, then I'm screwed. Right. And I think that even your college story is so funny because in the South, like how we would experience that is like, okay, I didn't drink in high school because my parents would have killed me. Right. Yeah. So then those kids go to a Southern party school and they go absolutely ballistic. Right. Yeah. And I sense some of that from like LDS members where it's like so restricted
exactly.
that it's then like, hey, give me some Botox and give me that laughing gas. Like it is so funny. Like I'm not judging you at all. I thought it was the funniest
I'm like,
thing.
Is that some judgment there?
No. It is
hey, I want some laughing gas and Botox. I'm pregnant, but you know.
Here's what I would say, and I mean this so sincerely, is that you guys want to do what most people are doing in the open. You're just not allowed to do it because of these guidelines, right? So it's like, our hearts for wanting to do these things are the same. It's just one's pretending like you can't. And then the rest are kind of like, oh, it's fine. You know, I'll have a glass of wine or I'll do this. Right.
And I do think it happens a lot in the Mormon culture and in general. Cause I mean, I have a friend, most of my friends weren't Mormon growing up because I'm from California. Yeah. And so like I had a friend too, where her mom was very strict, for example, like with what she ate. It was like, she cannot have any sugar. Like there's no sugar in the house, no soda, like nothing. But then she would go to school and she'd be getting vending machines, like getting the candy and the sodas and different things. Yes. It's the same with the religion where it's like, if your parents are too strict and too like to the bone of like the guidelines, you're going to have your kid rebel. 100%. And like, you're going to have your kid probably want to leave the church because they're like, I don't want to fit in this like box. And I want to like love Jesus and love God, but I also want like life experiences and I want to have a coffee or I want to have this and not feel like a bad person. And I think that's like what we do. It's like we, you know, my parents were never that strict like that. Like they were strict, like for the most part, like guideline wise, like alcohol, like don't have sex before marriage, like the core guidelines. But everything else, it was like, who cares? Like, who cares what people think? And stuff like that's always been my approach.
And I think too, growing up, like some things I've learned in the church is they teach you like with your values, if you have friends with similar values. And so if you don't have someone with similar values, it almost makes that culture of, okay, I'm better than you. So I feel like it kind of has that as well.
Right.
So maybe that's what the facade is too, is like, oh, well, my values are better than yours. So and I'm better than you.
Well, with that, I feel like everyone, at my parties, no one would ever admit to drinking besides me. I was the only one that was open about it. But there was a whole group of people.
They were saying Taylor made us drink. All five
They're
of us.
blaming you.
She made us.
I was like,
yeah,
that's a lot of power to give me.
There's one area where I feel like these guidelines or restrictions have manifested in a really weird way. And this is a broad generalization, but I think on the topic and
you're probably, I know what you're probably going to say. So Jordan and I have a lot of friends that are LDS, that are Mormon, like LDS. Just being in the blogging community, like we've just
there's a lot of
and let me just say this to you guys, but then because a lot of Danny's followers are LDS too. Let me say to all of you guys, there's so many things I respect about 100%. The LDS church. Like you guys do family better than anyone. Like I have actually taken tips of how to raise kids from Mormons. And I'm like, oh, that's a really good thing. I'm going to do that. But the one area is not necessarily drinking. I think that's played out interesting because there's an underground BYU drinking scene, but it's like actually in the topic of like sex. And I don't even know how to explain it. It just feels like it is so restrictive or taboo. There was one episode where someone talked about a lack of just like, we just don't talk about it. We don't talk about it in the home. There's no birds and the bees talk between kids and their parents. And so where I've seen that kind of manifest in interesting ways is that as Mormon kids grow up and go into adulthood, they treat sex very differently than any other culture I've been a part of. And am I right about any of these things? But it feels like the topic of sex in Mormonism is very
yes, it is
withheld.
It's so I would say so. And again, I think I grew up so differently because my mom's gonna kill me. But I went to Thunder and Under with my mom when I was 18. It's like Chippendales, but it's not it's not as racy.
It's like,
when I was 18, my mom was the one who took me. She's gonna kill me. But
it's like a Chippendale show.
But so I feel like I just wasn't raised that way. So I understand that, but I'm like, it's weird because it wasn't necessarily my experience. However, like I don't think I ever got the sex talk, but I think I did hear it like in school or something. And my parents
we talked about it at church, like even like and like they'd read Song of Solomon, where like it's like pretty raunchy in the Bible, and be like, this is what gets to happen when you're married, and and like, yes, of course they were like, don't have sex before marriage, but like here's what you get to look forward to, and here's a way to like love your husband, but like you talk about it.
They don't talk about it at church really. Like it's more just like don't do it. Like my parents were always just like, don't have sex, so get pregnant, and well, I get it, but
right though, and that's what's like kind of crazy is that like, you know, all of you had kids so young and were sexually active at such a young age, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen in the South. It absolutely does, but
it almost makes you like want to do more.
I almost wonder, it's the same analogy of the kid that I knew whose parents wouldn't let him watch PG movies or, you know, drink, and then he just goes buck wild in college. You know?
No, you're absolutely right. And I feel like that I've explained that kind of in interviews with the swinging stuff. Like, did you think the Mormon had anything to do with that? And it's like, for me, no, but for them, probably, because they're each other's first person and only person. Yes. So when you open this can of worms, when you're a little bored in your marriage 7 years deep, you're like, my wife's okay with this? Hell yeah. Or like vice versa. None of us felt wrong because we were all on the same page.
And then you add, they've never drank. They never drank the mix too.
Yeah. My ex-husband's first drink was at 29 years old. And like, so when you open this can of worms of doing all this, they've never done it. So it's like their college year starting now.
Yes.
Yeah. And I will say too,
that's
like,
how we felt watching the show. Is like there was
it feels that way.
Whose husband is Jordan?
Jesse's
husband. And this is not bad, but I think in the hot tub scene, he was the one pulling out the shots, and he was like, "Who's doing shots?" And he had his like Mountain Dew in his flask.
I was like, "This feels like a high school scene."
And that is Jordan's what we experienced.
That's just Jordan.
Okay, that's just Jordan. But in Texas, that is what like a high school kid who brought beer from his mom's pantry would have acted like. And so, in so many ways, you guys are such mature, well-rounded adults. But when it comes to the taboo things. There's a certain kind of naivete or immaturity with it.
For sure.
And I will say that it's interesting too, from going to BYU, is that there's more of like a peer pressure culture. Like if you are doing those things, because like I would go to parties in California, but I didn't drink, and people know like, oh, she's Mormon, she doesn't drink. No one would ever be like, come on, just do it. Like never. When I went to BYU, I was like, I don't want to drink tonight. The more people be like, come on, like just do it. Because I think they wanted to feel less guilt if they're doing it too. They want to feel like, oh, we're all doing it. It's not bad kind of thing, which like I get. But like I will say, like it made me worried to raise my kids here because I'm like, because if you do get into that like lifestyle, there's more peer pressure from like Mormons here who are doing those things because they want to feel like less guilt that they're doing it. They want someone to do it with them so they don't feel that way. Whereas California is like, oh, she doesn't drink, like leave her alone.
Just leave her alone. Like, I felt that way in Texas at UT. It was just like kind of everybody drank, but like if you didn't, it was like, okay, like you just, nobody really thought twice about it because it was just so accessible. Yeah. And I think everybody assumed that you did. And so it wasn't really like a big deal. So then you hide it more and it becomes like a bigger thing.
It's not accessible. Like, I don't know if you noticed, the liquor stores here close at like 6 or 5 o'clock.
No,
and, like, so many
at the Grand America over here, I tried to order, I don't drink anymore, but 3 years ago I did. And I tried to order a glass of wine, but you can't order wine without food.
Yep.
Like, and they also were like, you can't leave this area. And I was like,
you have to be like, it's like a lot lower if you were to get like a Mike's Hard Lemonade. It's like the percentage is so low compared to other states. Like it's really interesting.
They throttle it.
But I will say with the sex, I think it's just like the older generation too. Like I don't think my mom ever got the sex talk from her parents, and so she never educated us. And like I think a couple of us on the cast have dealt with sexual abuse and sexual trauma from a young age because we weren't educated. And so I think it probably played a factor into us also being sexually active at a younger age as well. And so with my kids especially, like I buy all the books about like knowing all your body parts, knowing everything. I feel like it's something I'm very open with my kids.
Yeah, I think the progressive Mormons, like our age, is like we are changing that. I guess like we're not gonna like my kids are gonna get the sex talk.
You gotta talk about it.
They're getting educated. Let's just put it that way. So I think that's what's different about like us and like the older generation is like we're so much more open about these things, and I would say more accepting of people than like the older generation.
Do you fear though? Here's my question: is that do you fear that you guys trying to change the culture to more progressive in some ways is going to uproot some of the like more conservative ideals that actually were good? And what I'm speaking to mostly is like family, right? Yeah. And I would also love for y'all's opinions on this because I was pretty shocked at like the conversations and the culture around divorce, like from the show. And maybe that was just the show, but I would love to know how you guys are feeling. And it's one thing to, let me be clear. I'm not judging you, Taylor, for getting a divorce, for anyone to get a divorce. But when it was like Layla.
Oh, Layla.
Layla, had her like celebration where it was like a birthday party for her divorce. Now I don't know her backstory. Yeah. And then it felt like almost like on the show, there were some cast members who were actually like encouraging divorce, you know, and I don't know if you guys can speak to that because that would be an example for me that I would say, hey, that is progressivism, like uprooting like conservative ideals that I actually think are very good for the family and should remain. Does that make sense?
I think there were a lot of conversations on the show that weren't in there where we've said like, I'm not pro-divorce at all. I think especially in this day and age, people throw out divorce so easily. Yeah. And so I think you should work on it as long as you can. I will say, however, like there are certain circumstances coming from a divorced family. Like I'm glad my parents got divorced because I think I would have a lot more trauma if they didn't. Totally. But I think, for sure in this day and age, I think divorce is just thrown on the table so easily.
Yeah, it's funny you said that at her party because my husband and I like he was not happy about it. Like he didn't want to go, to be honest. He's like, I refuse to wear black. It wasn't shown on the screen. Yeah. Because it was like such like a funeral for marriage. And my husband's like, we shouldn't be like celebrating like the end of marriage. Yeah, like he was like not about that. Sad.
I feel like
I agree too. It's like, why are we, I mean, no hate on her because I think she just, she's going through like her divorce and she wants to do what makes her happy.
She has her own story that we don't know about.
Exactly. So I totally understand that. But I think, we were kind of like, I don't know if we should be celebrating the end of a marriage because it's sad. It's like a family's like breaking apart. And like,
she has 2 kids too. I think we were similar in that too.
I think I felt that way too with like the Jen situation where like, like everyone was like, leave. And it's just like,
I felt that way too.
No, I was like, guys, I was like, he messed up. He spiraled that.
I don't know, but
Oh, sorry. I wouldn't have not
even if he is like that and has these issues.
You still work on it.
If you love him and he loves you, absolutely.
And I will say in their situation, I don't think those boundaries had been set yet. I did tell her too. I said, I'm not pro-divorce at all. I don't think you should divorce him just because everyone's like, we hate him, divorce him. Yeah. I think for sure you need to set up those boundaries and say, okay, if you do this again, like it's not if it's a continuous thing, she's getting verbally abused, like that's going to take a strain, and I don't think she should put up with it at all. However, I don't think it should just be like, oh, you need to divorce him, and then okay, fine, I'm gonna divorce.
What is Zoe's relationship with the husbands and with Zach?
I don't know about our Dakota liked him.
The boyfriend / Zach.
Yeah, Dakota liked him. Like, I mean, I obviously don't see them behind closed doors, but I like him. He's a really nice guy, and I could tell how much she loved him. She was like, I just love him so much, and he loves me. Like then work it out. Don't listen to anyone.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So I was like, none of us matter.
I felt like she was getting peer pressured.
I know Macy's the one to say.
No,
but
it's hard for me because I was there when she's getting
so much
a lot
more
of.
than
I
we
know
know.
so much
Yeah,
more from like
you know so much
at
more
least
than
what
we do.
I was reading from the messages that were coming from his mouth, and
Yeah.
so I was like,
Yeah,
this is
you see
concerning.
some things.
Like I feel like it
So,
makes
so
my
it's
heart beat
purely
fast
based on the
'cause I just-
messages.
It's based on
No.
that, and it's based on like this. It's not like, oh, this is the first time it's happening.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
a reoccurring
Okay,
thing.
that's fair.
And
Like,
That's
so
a
it's not like,
cycle.
oh, you just
It
blew
is.
up one night. It's like a toxic cycle.
It's been like
Okay.
this
And
for a
I
while.
think for them, it's like, I want them to work it out. I want them to really.
Yeah.
I know they're going to therapy, and that's great. I
Right.
think they should, but I think there should be set those
Yeah.
boundaries, and
course.
then do not cross these boundaries.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a hard time with him. I would say, like, we've hung out with him like in a double date and stuff, and I think he was really nice and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think I saw certain things before Vegas happened where I was like, I don't like this, but I didn't like it was ever my place to interject because I mean I was closer with Taylor, so I feel like I felt like more space to interject, and it's
We
different.
have to
because-
ask about you and Dakota too.
And it's
so
different too
yeah.
because like her and Dakota aren't married and stuff like
Yeah.
when I was
Yeah.
interjecting, whereas it's like a marriage, and I'm not trying to break up a marriage, right?
And
So,
Taylor
like,
likes
true.
the
different-
advice. She asked for it. So.
yeah, she's
Yeah, and
And I follow it, but I
yeah,
ask for it.
you always ask.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But
It's a
like
step.
there were things that I saw before even filmed where she would like confide in me and stuff, and I was like, "Okay, well, you need to stand up.
This
for
is a
yourself and say
problem.
this." And there's certain things that are like a problem, and
Okay.
I will say he's one to also throw out the word divorce like this, like
Yeah.
off the tongue.
It's
So
a
that's
control
really
thing.
toxic. That's
Yeah,
toxic.
like on the show and off the show. Like
That's not cool.
we've seen it, and so like, but here's the thing: is like we obviously want them to work it out. Like we want them to like, go get divorced. Like I know Jessica
Yeah.
feels other ways, but like we really hope he can change and like they can be happy. Like, and I think he's taking steps to do that. Like I
Yeah.
know he's personally called my husband and like apologized for things that he said about us, and like,
yeah.
and him and Jen were talking to my husband why
You guys are all getting apologies.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm still waiting
Yeah,
for the
no,
phone
I
call.
Yeah, so like I think he is taking steps to work on it. So I really hope like through therapy and through different things that he can change and they can work it out. Because at the end of the day, like our church is centered around family. Like
And
the core
it
of our
does bring that
church-
conversation to it too. Like the typical, I think he was born into that typical, like a husband's supposed to be
Exactly.
this
I
way.
know. I
And
feel
so
like
she
he
said
needs
that.
to join our Instagram husband camp.
He
Yeah.
has
We
a
meet on
group of
Tuesdays.
guys.
amazing.
Because I really felt in the show that he was probably struggling the most from an ego,
Yes,
more traditional
That's it.
upbringing.
It is.
100%.
And I have seen this in so many other husbands who have gone through this. What happens is that he was going to be the surgeon that was the provider,
Mhm.
and then TikTok blew up
Because that's
and-
what his dad was and his grandpa.
for
and-
sure.
Yes.
And it's tied into
Yeah.
the way that the church has positioned the male and the female in like the hierarchy and the
Mhm.
societal roles. And so he is like up against this path now of like, oh my gosh, my wife is making all this money.
Yeah.
My people know my wife. I'm a surgeon. I'm not a creative guy. I feel like I can't help her. So I feel like I'm just stay-at-home dad now. And it just affects everyone's egos differently.
Yeah.
And she
And-
said that too before.
Yes.
Like she didn't really find her voice until she got in this group of
Yeah,
people,
in our
people
friend group.
validating her feelings too, saying, "Yeah, that's not okay that
That's
he's
not
talking to you
normal.
No,
that way."
I
like-
felt like
And then he freaked out because she was finding her voice. So I think it's just a balance
He
with
wasn't
them.
used to her standing up for herself. And I
Yeah.
feel like
No.
she started doing it more when she hung out with us and realized like
he'll get in
we're
line
not
like
about
that.
that. You know?
Yeah.
I believe that when she starts speaking up, he will. I mean, I don't think he'll listen to this, but like he's gonna like pop in a line. But
like,
I also would
"Zach."
love to have them on the podcast because I feel what he's going through, and I think that what happened is it wasn't about Chippendales. It was actually about all of that.
Yeah.
It was about, hey, I'm insecure in our marriage. I'm insecure as a man.
Or
I'm
about the
insecure
show
about all
and the
this.
perception of the show
Exactly.
and how it's going to
But
affect my
unfortunately,
family.
the internet's going to think it's all about Chippendales. So it's
Yeah,
kinda screwed on
it's
that
definitely
one,
not
but-
just about Chippendales, but I definitely think he has some insecurities that he needs to work on. I mean,
Yeah.
he feels very threatened by things like that.
And I think
If
she
he
does
just comes
too,
to the dark
but-
side, it's a great life.
Just let
Instagram
it
husband life is
release.
a great life.
Yeah,
And
just
what's so
own it.
cool about y'all's careers is they evolve. Like
Yeah.
Danny and I were creating content for like 4 years, and then we launched Divvy, and then I was the CEO of that for 2
Exactly.
years. And like now
It all
I'm at the
launches you to
chairman
the
of
next
both.
thing,
Like,
and you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Jordan's not still behind the camera saying "Smile, sweetie." He's not my
Yeah,
Kris Jenner
it
anymore.
evolves.
Yes, we went through that phase where he was the Instagram husband, and he came to
Yeah.
parties, and people were like, "What do you do?" And he's like, "I work for my wife." But it wasn't. It's not always like that, you know.
Exactly.
Well, and I feel like we're already seeing that. Like we were on social media. Now we have a reality show. Now
Yeah.
we're doing different
Yeah.
things. Like I know it's going to present it different opportunities. But I think with them for sure, no one's at least not here. I don't think any of us are like, get divorced.
no,
Because I do want them to work it out. This
Yeah,
is like
exactly.
a very unique circumstance too with the show being added into the mix
Yeah.
where
Mhm.
I do know that they are going to therapy. So he is putting in the work.
Yeah.
But I also don't want her to shut down and feel like she can't reach out to us because
Yeah.
we're being too judgmental.
Of
Being
course.
like, we hate your
Yeah.
husband because
Yeah.
we don't.
We'll
So
get him on the
Exactly.
show.
What
We'll
is your
reconcile
relationship
everyone.
with
Yeah.
Dakota like these days? Because that was like a point of contention, right?
I feel like we're
And I get it because let me just tell you, one of my like it's a hard balance where it's like you love the person so much, you want to be protective over them, and like you're not there all the time. But so what is that like?
I feel like we're like cordial. We just all went to New York together because he came along, which I will say before the trip. Before the trip, I was like, come in, great, you know. But then like when he came, I feel like when we are together, we like vibe in person pretty well.
Yeah.
I think for me, the whole root of it was hard because like I feel like in the beginning, I was like on his team. Like there were scenes that were cut, like where I was on his side with certain like arguments and stuff, not between him and Taylor, but like Taylor's family who didn't like him, and I was like, you guys should accept him and like all these things. But then over time, like when there was issues, Taylor would come to me and confide in me. So of course I'm like building up this like arsenal of things I don't like over time. And I'm like, he does this, it's the red flag. This like, so I have all these things. I think it also stems from my past because I was in an abusive relationship. I know theirs isn't like that, but there were certain red flags that I saw from my own experiences where I was like, yo, like this isn't good. So like, it's a mix of both. But like, I do think like you guys, you know, I don't know, I can't speak to right now because I don't know what's going on, but like things, it did get better from like when they were originally dating, I would say like progression wise from what I saw. So it's like, I feel like we're cordial and I'm also like not trying to like, you know, separate them in any way, which some people just think that
it's because we're friends. It's like at the end of the day, we got our girls back and we're gonna, it's hard for us to bite our tongue when we see things that we don't like.
It is so hard for me to bite my tongue with like even the Zach situation too, or like anything. I'm just like, ooh, but like, if you're having these issues now, like let's either fix them or like,
is that how you felt?
Well, Taylor handles criticism very well.
She does.
Even though she doesn't take the advice, it's like she wants to hear it because I feel like the difference between her and Whitney is that Taylor wants to take accountability and she wants to learn from her mistakes, even though like it might take a while.
And she was asking for advice. I was like, Taylor, you need to do this, this, and this. Like I feel like most of the time,
but you were doing that too.
Sometimes because I feel like the gates were open, right? Like where I was like, I felt comfortable enough to do it, but no, 100%. It's just because I know at the end of the day, I care too much, and that's the problem. It's just I want my friends to be happy, like, and that's what like I ultimately want, like all my friends' happiness, and so. I feel like I feel it like for them when they're going through it, and I just want to like help so bad. But sometimes I guess it
can
look bad too.
Some bridges for Macy.
No, I think you look like a good friend. I mean,
I've had issues in the past.
No relationship is perfect. So we're all gonna just like if there's something that you see, then it's just being a good friend bringing it up. How is y'all's relationship with Whitney these days?
Not much there right now.
The relationship in the room.
So she's kind of just like out of the mom talk, like.
We don't even know. That's the thing. We don't know.
This is the first time.
I feel like we don't know what to say because it's like we don't really know where she's at. No one's heard from her or anything. She kind of like ghosted everybody. So like we don't even know. Like I hope she's doing well, but like like I would say we're cordial, but I don't know if I would say like
it's hard when people victimize themselves.
And they might like I feel like there's like dissociation. So like people need to do that sometimes and just like
step out of the situation.
I think that's where she's at right now. Yeah,
it might be.
Michaela,
I think that's what she wants to believe that she's doing, but I don't think that's what she's doing. No, I think she's out of control and is spiraling a little bit because she really likes to be in control. And I feel like when she's not in control, she's like, "I'm going to change my hair. I'm going to move. I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave a group chat." And I feel like that's very apparent. I mean, it's happened. It just happened the other day again.
Yeah,
I was like, are you still leaving group chats? Like,
Jordan, that was my thesis too.
TV watching, like yelling at the TV.
I'd be like, Whitney, you're just trying to run from the problems here.
And that's what's
a farm's not going to help you. Just talk to your friends.
That's what's so difficult too, because like watching the behind the scenes too, and like her leaving the group chat because I really don't understand the mental state of how things are going on in her head. But like when she left the group chat and then she's talking to her husband saying, "I left the group chat. But it's not because I want people to chase me, but like, why are they calling Macy? They could call me, but I don't want them to call me." And then she's talking to Jesse. "Why are they calling Macy? Like if my friend left a group chat, I would call them." And I'm like, why? She doesn't voice. It's almost like a game with her. Like she likes it's a test, I would say. She does all these tests and it's exhausting.
We've been there with some people.
What is the biggest misconception or misperception from the show that you feel like was casted on each one of y'all?
Well, I think that we're not all swingers. I think that like when people saw the trailer, they're like,
people think all of y'all are swingers?
Well, they do. But like the show, no.
The show,
from the actual show itself.
Or if people talk about it, they probably just say, "Oh, it's about these girls that swing."
I think people also need to realize, even like when it comes to the show, that like it's a reality show at the end of the day. So there are certain things that I saw and I'm like, I'm taking a little bit out of context there, but you know, like so that you're gonna have that here and there. But for the most part, like everything that happened in the show, like was shocking to me because it was like real.
It was really like, this is real drama.
And I was like, what is going on here? Like I was like genuinely so confused.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people had resentment deep down for certain people that had issues, but they never voiced it, and it all came out on the show.
It was like therapy.
No, literally. But I think for the most part,
Yeah.
most of us have pretty thick skin. I wouldn't say everyone on the show does. Like, obviously not Whitney. Like, and to where you could take that criticism and be okay, like, how can I change that and better our friendship? But not everyone takes that approach, and not everyone can handle that, I guess. It takes certain personalities to handle that. Like Demi, for example. Like, she thought she got, like, shit on the night before, right? And, like, yeah, she did in some circumstances. But she can take that and, like, fix the problem and be like, let's be friends again. Like, let's work it out. Yeah. And some people obviously couldn't do that, you know?
So I know we're kind of like wrapping up. Okay, one of the last questions. How, for like season 2, how do you guys allow more people into the MomTok group? Or like, how do people join the MomTok group? I'm not asking for personal.
MomTok isn't a group; it's a state of mind.
No, but like the the MomTok group on season 2.
I say I don't know.
Or are y'all going to allow more people to do it?
Well, it wouldn't be up to
Danny's
us.
like, listen, I don't live in Utah, but can I join the MomTok?
Like, I think I do. No, I can't dance. And like,
it's okay.
a lot
of us can't. We can't dance.
No. I'm good.
I think at the end of the day, it's not really up to us when it comes to MomTok and the show. Like, we don't have as much say as people think. And so if they wanted to add someone and if we were like, we don't want them to, they still would do it.
Yeah, they know what to do.
Can you say if there would be new, or you're probably not allowed to say this, if there's going to be new people?
We have no idea.
Oh, yeah, we have no idea.
We have no idea.
No idea for season, or if season 2 even.
I'm sure we'll get a couple curveballs.
And if we do, it's going to be like when we start filming. They probably won't even tell us until like we start filming.
Who would be like your ideal person you'd want to join MomTok? Your group.
Well, it's so hard to say because there's so many influencers in Utah. Like, there's so many.
I know you have to have a favorite, though.
We'd love you all join.
I really don't have any friends outside of She's like, I don't have any friends. Yeah. I'm not kidding. Like, when we had our premiere, I was like, how are you guys inviting 70 people? I invited, like, my 2 sisters, and only one of them showed up. I was like, how do you guys know so many people?
I don't think we'd want anyone.
Really?
But
okay,
I think who everyone wants is Miranda to come on, for sure.
Oh, from the... Okay, yeah.
I think they just want to... She was also such a big part of MomTok.
Okay.
There's a lot left unsaid there. Yeah. I think if they were to pick anyone, I think it'll be her.
That was my theory.
I can't say she would agree to it.
She do, yeah.
We don't even know if there's a season 2, but if we were to guess, I'd probably be.
I feel like it would be dumb if she did agree to it, because I feel like people are going on stuff being like, oh, I was offered the show, but like, I'm too good for it, so I'm not going to do it. And then they're offered the opportunity to actually do it, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I have hard feelings towards people that do that.
Yeah. And I think too, like, even if it's like, oh, I love this person, it doesn't mean I feel like there's certain personalities that maybe are not meant for reality TV.
100%.
So even if we love like a certain influence or whatever, it's still like, you don't know how it would be on reality
it's
TV
taxing.
for them. Like, they could be the nicest person in the world. Maybe you're not meant for this because you have to have thick skin. Yeah. And like, you can be sensitive, but I feel like the ones who are more sensitive have a lot harder time with it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, where can people find...
I have one more question. So there was like one group of people, and I think this is like a really good question to end on. There was like a group of people who I think we talked to before this episode and that followed Danny, who were also LDS, that were females, just like you guys, who were probably struggling with a lot of the same things that you guys have struggled with within the culture and in the church.
Yeah.
What would you say to those females in the LDS community who are in the church or thinking about leaving? You know, I would just leave it at that.
I mean, I would say just do whatever makes you happy. Like, whatever makes you feel closest to God and Christ, like whether that's being Mormon or not, you know, like for me, it's like being Mormon is like, I don't follow every single guideline to a T. I mainly go off like my relationship with God and Jesus and how I'm as a person. Am I a good person? Am I helping my neighbor? Am I like being kind to people? And I think that's what matters the most. I don't think people need to be like, oh, I can't be Mormon if I like do this or this, because you can't. And like the culture may make you think otherwise, but it's not true.
Yeah. I love that. That's a good answer.
Yeah. Oh, we're going down the line.
I would be curious. I want to know from everyone you know.
I don't know. I haven't been active in the church for a long time, so I would say the same. Just like whatever you feel like is making you the most authentic version of yourself, like go off with that, which is easier said than done. Like with getting hate, I'm like, just be yourself. Like it doesn't really matter what people think, and it is easier said than done. But I think it's just a conscious action of telling yourself that over and over again. So yeah.
Yeah, I swallowed down the wrong pipe, so I was like, but with that, the same, like our message we wanted to share with everyone is like, we wanted to show all different dynamics of how we live being Mormon, like from someone that was born and raised and left, and then, I'm like,
we'll clip it as a cry.
I'm like,
she's like, is that a CGI tear?
Literally. But yeah, born and raised, they left, and then you have like the middle people, and then you have someone very devout, and so we were wanting to share that so many different ways, and there's not one way, and I feel like that was the message we wanted to give to everyone.
That's really good.
So kind of along with what she said.
And like the hard conversations we're having, like I said, I hope it just sparks more conversation and more change.
Yeah.
Y'all are
Have you guys heard from the church?
No. They put a statement out like before the show came out, but I think it was out of fear because like everyone was freaking out, so like they had to put one out, and it was about our show and a movie that's coming out. That's like a horror movie with missionaries in it. Like
scary.
I think they kidnapped the missionaries. I don't even know, but I think it is a statement for like both of the things. You know, it's mainly just like, hey, come to us. Like if you want like the information on the church, which I agree. It's like yes, like we're not representing the church. Like we're not trying to like speak for the church. However, if you are curious, go to like the church's website.
So you guys are still allowed in and allowed to.
As far as we know,
you guys aren't gonna burst into flames.
I mean, I was at church yesterday, so I was good.
So we're good. Where can people find you guys?
Yeah, I'm at Mayci Neely on Instagram and TikTok.
And your brand.
brand.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
I
tell us
have
your
it
brand.
for you.
This is so sweet.
You made the bag.
I made the bag.
I love
Guys, this is BabyMama. We're at BabyMama.co
So
on Instagram and TikTok. Those are the postpartum gummies.
What does
I
this
also
help
gave you-
with?
That helps with like water retention, bloating, hormones,
Oh
and,
my
like breast
goodness.
milk.
Yeah, I know, literally.
Yes, that one tastes the best to me
the
too. And then these are our
pregnancy
pregnancy gummies. They're normal prenatal, but it has raspberry leaves in it, so it's supposed to help like your body get ready for birth and like tone the uterus and
tone it.
and they're all like vegan, non-GMO, gluten-free, no artificial colors, sweeteners.
You take one a day?
2. But yeah.
They're like candy.
They have like the best texture. I feel like.
They're like candy. I'm like, y'all want them?
Yeah. You like it?
They're
I'm trying to
so
get pregnant.
good.
I'm like, for a
I know,
clean
you're
gummy,
like,
and it's not
no,
gonna taste like candy, but it's pretty.
No, it tastes like
considering-
candy.
Yeah,
It
okay, well,
does.
good then.
Wow,
I've
they're
had some pretty
amazing.
disgusting prenatals too, I will say, and I get so sick when I take prenatals.
Me too, or I'm so
So
nauseous and I can't
yeah.
swallow them.
It's nice to have something that's not
That's
disgusting.
And I made Michaela like flavor test before we even.
They're
like,
really good.
Yeah, decided.
actually.
So I had my
we got through
friends
some gross
test.
ones.
They're like
we
sour,
got-
but in a good
yeah,
way.
we
Sour
had
candy.
like we had to reformulate because there was one really gross one, and I had to completely reformulate the flavor because this is not.
It's always hard.
It's hard being her friend too. I'm like, do you want me like this?
You know,
I was like, no,
this is
give me
sick.
the honest
Yo.
truth.
They're really good.
But the
Thank
texture
you.
was always good.
Thank you so much.
That's
It's been
awesome.
a grind going from influencer to like now
Yeah, it's
having a
hard.
physical product. I'm sure you know, like such a different like
So
industry.
different.
So yeah, it's
good
a
for you.
grind, but it's doing well, and I'm glad I got to launch it on the show.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks.
Michaela, where can
Where
people
can we
find
find
you?
Oh, I was like, what were we talking about? I'm at Mikayla _ Matt MATT on Instagram, and then I think it's just Mikayla Matthews on TikTok.
And we'll put it all in like the show notes.
Perfect.
Mine is just Taylor Frankie Paul on both
Are we supposed to look
platforms.
there?
I don't know.
Yeah, look him right in the eye.
I was like, I didn't say it over there. I said it over here.
Seriously, thank y'all so much
this is
for
cool.
coming on this podcast. I like
course.
these are some amazing conversations.
Thank you.
Y'all are some of the most inspirational people that I've ever talked to in this podcast. And y'all are so young and have already lived so much life. And I know that just through your stories, you're changing people's lives. Y'all really are.
Well,
so
thank you for having us.
It was really fun.
yeah, y'all are amazing. Okay. We'll talk to y'all next episode. Bye.